All right, so again, my name is Dr. Bryan Henry, founder of PsychMD, the main sponsor here. PsychMD is a subsidiary of our main holding, which is called Peter MD. We're the largest men and women's hormone optimization clinic in North America. So we are excited to talk about the endocrine system and a little bit about hormone optimization, which is really actually incredibly crucial. Layne here is a world-renowned, I would say, pharmacist. He has a massive following on social media, a very highly trusted individual, really an expert on the hormone system. So let's get started with a little bit about EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, which is destroying yours and I's hormone system. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Wow, yeah, this is a big one, and it's one that most people don't really hear much about. It first came to my attention when we're talking about endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors. A practitioner that I work closely with, we were discussing this patient that she was not getting a good response in her estrogen therapy, actually, and as she pressed a little more and probed a little more as to what was going on, it turned out she was adding flaxseed to her morning smoothie. And flaxseed is highly estrogenic, which means it has a tight affinity for the estrogen receptor. And so it was interfering with the actual hormone estradiol. And you might ask, well, what is that a problem? If it's estrogenic, is it doing the same things? Well, it doesn't do the same things with the same potency and the same strength. So it complicates the therapy. And then, as I became a little more aware of that, I came across a book by Dr. Shauna Swan called Countdown. And that was eye-opening, because it brought men into the picture here. You understand the way hormones work. There's a hormone, and then there's the receptor, lock and key. It elicits its response through that receptor. And most people, most practitioners, and patients for that matter as well, are more tuned into their levels, their blood levels of hormones. And that's important, it is, but it's not the whole picture. Because if you can imagine, if there's an imposter in there circulating around that can sit on and block that receptor for a given period of time, because they fly on and off these receptors, then that can be a problem that you can't see in a lab. And so it becomes much more important that the subjective input that your patient is giving is listened to very carefully, because quite often it'll be dismissed as, well, your levels are fine, so it's not the hormones. Maybe. So this has become a big part of my focus. My attention these days is less on a compounding pharmacy, although I still have one, and more on my social media efforts under hormone specialist. And boy, the response that I got when I started talking about these hormone disruptors, because, so the question is, what are some of those? Well, phthalates are a big one. Where do you get phthalates? Well, it comes from, probably mostly from plastics, vinyl, plastics that wrap food or contain food. And we say vinyl flooring. A lot of products within the home are vinyl these days. They off-gas. There's phthalates in that. There's phthalates in fragrances, very common source of phthalates. Phthalates are androgen disruptors as well. And that can become very important early on. This is another area that, gosh, I wish more people knew about. Pregnant women, there's a window between about 7 and 12 weeks where gender differentiation occurs. You have the formation of genitalia, and if there is not adequate, it's actually DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which is converted from testosterone. At that point, there will be problems, and there can be not only physical development problems, but as we're learning, different brain development problems, which has led many to wonder, does this have to do with gender dysphoria? And the question is, that's a good question, and it's quite fraught actually, because a lot of times people are not ready to talk about that, the reasons why things happen. To me, it was validating that there could be a scientific explanation for these things. I don't think people often choose to have any kind of dysphoria, do you? I think most people that struggle with or deal with those issues would probably agree. They didn't choose this. And here is finally some scientific evidence that I believe could shed some light on this. So, and there are all kinds of others, hormone disruptors.
What about the water we're drinking? How would you say the fluoride, the atrazine? I mean, just so much in the public water system. Would you say that's affecting endocrine?
Yeah. Boy, fluoride's another hot button issue. People are either for it or they're against it, and boy, it's like a religion. So let me talk about PFAS, PFAS, PFOS. Those are ingredients that come from anything that's waterproofed. A rain jacket, a shiny rain jacket, furniture will be coated with this stuff, or stain guards on carpets. So you can see this is in all of our homes. Well, they call them forever chemicals because they take a long time to be eliminated from the body and also to be degraded in the environment. And they are linked to reproductive issues. So that's a big deal. There's a lot of them. So my big mantra is, you gotta filter your water. I don't care where you live. You gotta filter your water, and then, oddly enough, you gotta filter your air. Know another place where you find a lot of phthalates? House dust. Just common little dust bunnies. And dust that's on the furniture. It's in the air. So, how are you gonna avoid that? Well, you can't really. You just have to filter it out. So a good carbon filter in both water and air. I recommend you put a carbon filter on your furnace intake. They're not even that much more expensive than a regular furnace, but you want to look for the ones that say odor eliminating, because that means it's got carbon in it, and carbon will filter out most endocrine disruptors. You want to have the best chance possible for your body to utilize the hormones that you're making. And anything that imposes on that or comes in and acts as an imposter, you ought to be aware of and try and avoid. So yeah, filter water, filter air, buy organic foods.
What about cooking materials, like pots and pans?
Oh yeah, for sure. So that Teflon is, and coatings, non-stick coatings are definitely in that. And if they're flaking or part of it's already worn off, oh please, drop that right in the trash. Get rid of it. It probably ought to be disposed of as a hazard, but yeah, you should not cook with that, because where are those flakes going? You're eating them with your food. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so bringing up the attention on EDCs, I think is extremely important since it's so new. I've been doing this endocrinology thing for about 10 years. My patient population keeps dropping in terms of age. So when it used to be a 40-year-old man, as nature takes away, we try to give what nature takes away, we try to give back. Now we're seeing patients as young as 22, 23, 18-year-olds come into our practice here with low testosterone, subjective hypogonadism. So I think getting the awareness out about what's going on with the chemicals that the government's putting into our foods, our waters, the air is extremely important. At the end of the day, our endocrine system is probably one of the most important organ systems we have. So really, what would you suggest, Layne, trying to disrupt this? And would you consider this an epidemic? What do you think?
I would. If you read Shauna Swan's book, Countdown is what it's called again, she is an epidemiologist, and she has done these temporal studies over time, looking at the last 50 years. And hormone levels in men and sperm count are down a full 50%. So that's about 1% a year over the last 50 years. That's why this stuff's important. That's why like he has seen in his clinic, I saw a guy the other day, he was 22, and he had a testosterone level of 187. That's a total testosterone level.
Which it should be around over 650 nanograms at least.
Oh yeah, that's just alarmingly low. And so what I recommend now to young men now, who I'm seeing a lot more of too, they just keep coming in. These are athletes. These are strapping young men that you would not expect to have any issues with testosterone. And we've always thought of that as a middle-aged thing, right? Not so. So what I recommend is you really need, and so this is manifesting in fertility as well. So you really need to know what your sperm count is if you're a young man. Why? Well, first of all, it's a marker for general health. We know that healthy sperm counts and healthy sperm, not just the count, but the morphology and the DNA, it's a reflector of general health. But if you want to have kids, this ought to be a concern to you. This is why they call it an existential threat. And this is probably not hyperbole, where that word usually is used. Because if we can't...
Population control.
If we can't reproduce, we can't exist, can we? So it's a threat, and that's why men should know. So it's easy to do these days. You can get a test online. There's one called, what is it? GiveLegacy.com. I don't have any association with these folks, but they do a good job of letting you do a sperm sample at home, send it in. They will not only give you the analysis on it, but then you also have the opportunity to decide if you want to freeze some, because it generally doesn't get better, sperm count. There are some things we can do to raise it a little bit, but often this stems from a genetic thing or something that happened in utero. So it's not reversible often. So you want to know this early, where you have the best chance then of, and it's much less expensive than you might think these days. I mean, to store for a year, I want to say it's like $75 a year or something to store a sperm sample. So.
Yeah, so if you're drinking out of a plastic cup right now, you may be contributing to the situation. So just be careful, because honestly, you never know how long those plastics have been stored. Typically, they're stored for decades before they're utilized. So really, we just wanted to come in here and bring the attention to the EDCs. Again, it's an epidemic. It's only getting worse. They say that your grandparents had a testosterone 5 times what we now have in our millennia. So again, it's becoming a problem. If you want to feel better, that's probably the first place to start. Make sure you're exercising, plenty of vitamin D, make sure your diet's on point, and plenty of sleep, and watch out for the EDCs, and typically you'll be okay. So any questions before we wrap this up, guys?
Okay, very good question. The question was, are there better plastics than others? We certainly don't want you to be dehydrated and have a problem like that because all the water you have is in a plastic bottle. When it heats up, that's when it's worse. So don't leave plastic bottles in the car or anywhere where they're hot. I have a picture that I put on my website that had 2 pallets of water bottles sitting outside of a grocery store in the heat. And I'm thinking that's why right there. There are what they call RICs, resin identification codes. A lot of people think they're recycle codes. They have a little triangle. They're not. All that indicates is the resin that it was made from. The best is a 5, RIC 5. If you have to use a plastic, look for one that's an RIC 5. And that includes in, right, yeah, and don't ever reuse what they call single-use bottles. Do your best to just avoid plastics. Microplastics we haven't even talked about. It's just everywhere. This stuff doesn't degrade. It just gets smaller. And when things get smaller, they get into more places and cause trouble. They found them recently in the heart. And cardiac surgeons have found microplastics in the heart the size of a small grain of rice. How did that get there?
Yeah, scary.
So what I'm saying is wherever you can, take bags to the store. Take cotton bags, organic if you can. Use those for your vegetables, for your produce, for just groceries in general, rather than, hang them up in a tree as a flag. So tired of seeing Walmart flags in trees.
Anybody else?
That's a good question. If I understand, I couldn't hear you. Your question is about detoxifying from like microplastics and things like that? I don't know, honestly.
I honestly don't think there is a way to really detoxify. I mean, glutathione is probably the best antioxidant we have that's going to be able to detoxify. But that's what's so bad about microplastics is that you can't. So unfortunately, that's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wish I had a better answer for you. Yeah. Filtration just becomes really important, which then begs the question, okay, what do I do with my water filters? Throw them in the trash, which goes where? To the landfill, and then into the water supply. There are companies now who will I don't know if recycle is the best word. They will take care of that. You send your filters in. Just read about one last night. But you can take this to kind of ridiculous degrees, but it does beg the question, if these things are out there and I just filter it out, am I just throwing it back in then when I'm done? What good? I haven't done anything really for my fellow man. I've done something for myself and protected myself. But at this point, it does become very defensive. You have to defend yourself and your family. Make sure you have clean water, clean air. Studies are showing that indoor air is far worse than outdoor air. And it's because of the off-gassing from things that are in our homes. So take a look at things. I have a tool on my Instagram bio where it'll actually take you through your home and look at 5 different areas and help you identify where you're getting the most exposure. Personal care products are a big one. Food. Buy organic food whenever you can. And then the things we've talked about, fragrances, plastics, carpet, the kind of carpet you buy, the kind of flooring. If you have the opportunity and you're remodeling or you're buying and building, choose your materials a little bit differently. So that's a tool that's available if that would help. A lot of people find that helpful because you don't know where am I getting exposed.
I think we have maybe one more question. Sure. It's a great question. Testosterone is absolutely fundamental for women as well. There is definitely a epidemic in women's testosterone level. that we've started seeing more and more and more within our practice. And as we know, testosterone is vital for many functions, libido, my goodness, muscle mass. And we know now that muscle mass, skeletal muscle, is probably the #1 indicator of longevity and health. So just as men need to be tested, so do women, and they also need to be treated as well. I think there's a stigma around testosterone in women. They don't want to get muscles, but that's not what it's about. It's about complementing the other hormones, because that's what hormones do, is they complement each other. So yeah, great question. Women need to be worried about it as well.
Sexual issues are just one small part of it. Muscle mass can't be overstated. It's so metabolically important that you maintain muscle mass. The older we get, it's what kills people, honestly. It makes you frail, you're gonna fall, become incapacitated. So very good question. I refuse to call testosterone a male hormone. No.
Anybody else? Go ahead. One more. So I'll tell you, we have probably one of the most up-to-date experts sitting next to me here. So you want to give him your handle?
Oh. Oh, sure. So my Instagram is Hormone Specialist, @Hormone Specialist. It's also on YouTube, TikTok. Do I dare say that? Yeah, that's where I try and post regularly. There's a lot there on endocrine disruptors and hormones in general, which apply across the board. Hormones are foundational, folks. It's really hard to move on to other disease, even disease types, without establishing, you got a good, firm, solid hormone foundation. I can't overstate that. We have time for him?
Yep, go ahead. I have not. What exactly is that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Say it one more time. What is it?
Think Dirty.
Think Dirty. That's a great name too.
And
there, by the way.
EWG's app. What's it called? What did you say?
EWG.
Yeah, EWG. Environmental Working Group. But they have a healthy living. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Healthy living. There's another one too that I like. Now I just can't remember what it is. But these are important because they will help you vet products in the store. You have to be a discerning buyer. That's where you have your influence. And those products, you can't remember all these things. They're long chemical names, even categories. They don't say, well, this has phthalate in it or a paraben, but it will rate them for you and tell you there's hormone disruptor issues with that. That's a very good point. Those are good apps. Let's see if I can find that one that I use.
And one more thing, what would you say about whole foods, Layne? Do you feel that non-processed whole foods are more beneficial?
Oh, absolutely. Whole foods simply mean not processed. Anything processed just goes straight in, gets absorbed. First of all, it's got junk, it's got preservatives, it's got no fiber, but it will go in there and raise insulin levels, spike them up. You want insulin to be over a period of time to be maintained. So that's important. And the fact that they're organic. Organic is not a perfect label. Don't anybody mistake me for saying that, but it's the best we have at this point. So wherever you can, shop for organic. You might be surprised too that it's not as expensive as you might think compared to the regular, so just check it out. One over here.
What's the question? Is it healthy? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Layne had touched on that about how important it is if you're building a house, et cetera. Make sure the materials that you're choosing are free of EDCs. I mean, It's not well known, so great question. But again, that's what we're trying to expand on here. So
This is hard. It's a very good point. By the way, the other app that I like is Yuka, Y-U-K-A, for helping you vet products that you're purchasing, especially personal care products. Home construction, gosh, you can only do so much. We have come a long way from the days when they used to plumb with PVC. Most of what's used today, what's it called? Packs, I want to say, that they use for plumbing. It's not bad. It's not bad. They've made progress there, but yeah, to the extent that you have choice, ask those questions. What is the RIC? What's the resin identification code? And if it's a 1, or there's polystyrene, there's poly-PVC, those 2, 4, or 5, that's what you want. 5 being best when you have a choice.
Oh, one more. That great question. You can't really do anything about it because it's bureaucracy at the end of the day. So it's all it is it's a substrate or a sub-data of the population, and that population isn't healthy. Because you got to understand, the most of the population, 90% is obese, diabetic, diabetes, et cetera. So it's only getting worse for us as treating physicians, for sure. That's why you need to get your levels done, get a baseline, and figure out where you are. Again, and it's about age and it's about symptoms as well. So, but that's what they're doing with the changing the levels of normal levels, physiologic levels is absolutely terrible in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I think that those ranges, you always want to be nearer to the top, optimal. They will change depending on the analytic equipment that the different labs use. So that's part of the reason for that variation. But you do want them to be on the upper level of those, as Bryan, I'm sure, will attest. That's important.
Anybody else? One more. Well, of course, your levels are going to be highest in the morning. Why it's called morning erection. Let's put it that way. So the morning is always going to be the best to determine, and insurance loves to see that. But then again, I like to test our patients throughout the day because it's all about treating symptoms rather than treating numbers, in our opinion. So if you're getting tired in the afternoon, your levels are dropping, why don't we keep them consistent? So, but the morning is whenever they're the highest.
And to me, what I will advise practitioners I'm consulting with is probably more important that it's done the same time every time. If you draw that level at 2, then draw it at 2 the next time too, so you don't have that variable confounding your interpretation.
I wouldn't. No, because the half-life of the medication. Typically, we use testosterone cypionate, which has about a 3.5 to 5 day half-life, so it wouldn't matter when we gave it.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
All right, guys.
And a pleasure.
Thank you
being
so
here.
much.